Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Hello, Sarah.
Hey, Kevin.
How is it going today?
Pretty good. I am on the tail end of a 3-day fast.
More like a 3-day slow, right?
Nope. 3-day fast.
Oh.
And feel pretty good. Looking forward to eating in a few hours.
I ate some peanut butter today.
That's nice.
Yeah.
My story's better.
I don't know. Well, no, yeah, it is. Yeah. You have more energy than I do.
Mm-hmm.
My lack of energy is because I've been getting up early for a few days to train, learning things.
New
Just
job.
weird. Yeah, it's a freelance writing gig, and it's unusual to have training for a freelance writing gig. So I was a little peeved about it, to be honest. But it's worth it because it's a cool gig.
But you said someone complained, and then you got a bonus.
Yeah. I think the other contractors were like, "Hey, this is too much training." Because generally, contractors, you just pay them for their time, or per project or per hour, per day, per something. But you don't just like take up hours of their day 3 days in a row and not pay them for it. So
That's an interesting, they chose to just give you more money as opposed to being like, okay, you can veto the training.
yeah, well, the training is really
Or
important
audit.
because I don't think I can get into the details of what exactly the job is, but it's for a law firm. And it's legal, technical, scientific writing, and it has a lot of minutia. Legal writing in general has a lot of nuance to it. Certain words are like banned and favored. The structure of documents is very specific. There's like a loose conceptual outline, but there's probably 40 checklist items to consider per document. So it's a lot of in-depth training. I personally didn't need the training because they also have reference material, which is how I usually learn everything. It's reference material. I haven't been taught something in a great while.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think they should just let people test out of training.
Yeah.
Because that way they're confirming that you know the shit you're supposed to know.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you just don't train them, then people are going to screw up a lot more. You know?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. It's stupid. So I've been getting up early.
Poor
Getting up
thing.
at like 5 a.m. Just like, what do I learn now?
Yeah.
I fell asleep during today's training. Don't tell anyone.
You
I
just
took-
told
I took-
everyone.
Yeah.
You just told all 5 million of our listeners.
But hey, listen, you 5 million. Don't tell your friends. Yeah, I deliberately took a nap during training because I was like, this is too long.
I assume it wasn't like a Zoom meeting where they could see you.
No, I just turned off my camera 2 days ago. I was like, I'm checking out. You know?
Yeah.
I sat there in training on camera for 4 hours and lost my mind.
How many people have their camera on?
Everyone else, so like 11 people.
Oh, and they don't care if you turn yours off?
Nobody said anything. I'm sure they care, but
Yeah.
I do too. You know.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like if you're allowed to do it, you would think everyone does it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny too because as I've been working remotely for 10 years, and I haven't had an online synchronous meeting in a couple of years because I've been doing consulting work and writing, so I haven't really needed to like meet with people directly. And this was the first meeting I've been to where everything went off perfectly without a hitch, and everybody had their camera on, everybody's lighting was good, everybody's microphone was muted. And it occurred to me that that's probably because of the pandemic. Like, I think the pandemic trained a lot of people to communicate remotely using web technologies and web meetings and stuff. Whereas before, it was terrible. Every meeting I was in, there was some problem with somebody. If it was like a video, audio, web meeting, you know, somebody would have their camera off or microphone wasn't working or, you know, joining the meeting from the bathroom or something. Yeah. But I think the Zoom age has trained people.
Yeah, perhaps.
Either that or they're just all like spontaneously somehow very good at web meetings. I don't know.
I don't know either.
You seem super, super bored by this topic.
Yeah, it's really boring.
I don't think it is. But I'm the
Okay.
one who hasn't really slept in a while, so I'll take your word for it. You want to talk about butts?
Yeah.
All right. So butts are pretty cool.
Butts are
I
cool.
I like butts.
I'm doing a chastity week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Would you like to know what that entails?
Yeah, go on. I was just going to guess, but yeah, you should just tell me.
So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool idea. I liked it. So it was this chastity week challenge through my OnlyFans. And I made it really easy to sign up. I just made a post on OnlyFans and I said, like, if you want to sign up. So something like 80 people signed up. And And then I sent out the rules, which are things like, so throughout the week, I'm sending through my DMs like short little videos, pictures, like teasing and stuff like that. And the guys are all supposed to be locked up. For anyone that doesn't know, chastity, like male chastity, is like when you put your dick in like this little cage and there's a lock on it. So they have to keep their dick locked up. They can't touch themselves. They can't orgasm, stuff like that. And so they have to check their DMs every day and watch all these like teasing pictures, driving them crazy and stuff like that. And then at the end of the day, they have to do a check-in where they show me a picture of their locked up wang with a piece of paper that has that day's date and then a thank you, Ciara. And I've been keeping track of them all in a spreadsheet. And there's like penalties if they like don't thank me for a picture or they don't buy a video or they don't check in properly, stuff like that. And so it started out with 80 people. And then, as you can imagine, once there was like money and rules involved, there was a giant cull the first day. So I went from around 80 to
like 20?
36, 37.
36, yeah.
And so this is now the third day. It started Monday. And since that first day, the first day was like a lot of work. I was like on my spreadsheet checking all these guys, and like it's pretty cool because on OnlyFans I can make a list of everyone and I can send out mass emails to just people on that list, and then I can also just boot people off the list as well, so they make it pretty easy. But yeah, the first day was a bit of a headache going through like 80 emails seeing if these guys did what they were supposed to do. But now that it's at 37 and it's of guys who are taking it seriously, it was way easier this morning to keep track of them. But yeah, it's cool. I like group stuff like that.
Yeah.
And things involving spreadsheets, which sounds super nerdy, but
I was a little surprised by the spreadsheet part, but
yeah.
The group thing kind of makes sense because you're leveraging, it's more profitable for less work. Mm-hmm. And, so that's nice.
Yeah.
And spreadsheets are cool.
Yeah. I had this one guy say like, why don't you have them all use this like chastity device that like I guess you can hook it to an app, and so I would actually control whether they'd be locked or not.
Wow.
But I'm like, dude, if I can barely get guys to get involved with what I'm doing, the chances of me getting them to buy a special chastity device and like download an app, like that's just asking too much. That would go from 80 to like 2, and then I'm not making nearly as much money. Plus the check-in picture aspect, even though it's not like, I mean, it's not
foolproof.
They could
they could unlock and then relock.
Right, exactly. They could cheat, but whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like
you don't really care.
Yeah, I'm getting paid. They're obviously having fun. Like,
yeah.
But the picture also adds to like the humiliation aspect of it as well. So that's what I've been working on all week.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. I've been learning legal writing.
Because
I'm a grown up.
That's hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and this week I also got a gig writing medical writing, which is something I've been trying to do for a while, since I found out that was a job. Because I have, as some listeners will know, I have kind of a weird. I hyper focus on several topics, and medical information is one that I've been kind of hyper focused on for like a decade. So I found that I was very well suited to writing about medical topics. So that's cool. Again, I'm an adult, so...
It's boring. Why'd you do that?
Yeah, I regret it. I wish I wasn't an adult.
Big mistake, Kevin.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
Yeah. Aw. But spreadsheets are pretty dope. When people don't know about spreadsheets, I'm always like, you gotta learn about spreadsheets. I mean, granted, they have specific uses, but they're good for like everything.
Oh yeah.
Even like a lot of software can be modeled in spreadsheets before it's built. You can almost build like an MVP of a lot of novel software. Like I used to work in an analytics department for a big company, and we didn't have any budget for software development. That was like a whole different department, and they would never do anything because it was all like madly expensive. They were definitely over quoting things though. I remember one time I wanted to add other to a drop down menu on an internal form, and they said it would cost $1 million, so they can't do it.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, guys, if this actually costs $1 million, you should fire yourselves, because that's fucking ridiculous.
Why would it cost $1 million?
Staffing. I mean, because look, the changes they would need to make if they had a really shitty setup is they would have to make database changes, and that is the part that gets complicated. Because I mean, it shouldn't be, though, because I mean, it's not like whoever built the form is under the impression that that's the only form they're going to build and it's never going to change. That's just ridiculous. And the fact that they didn't have an other field in the first place is their problem. Anyway, what am I? Oh, right. We didn't have a budget in my department for any software development, but one of the guys on my team knew a lot about Visual Basic, which works in Spreadsheets, apparently. It's a programming language you can use in Spreadsheets. So we just built software in Spreadsheets, like different automations and shit and forms you could interact with that would produce like reports. It was very cool. All just from Excel.
Wow.
This was before the days of Google Sheets.
Yeah.
Which now is better than Excel, I think.
Yeah, the other day I asked you something kind of basic on Excel.
I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, and it was something like, how do you switch the Y and X
the X
axis?
and Y axis on a chart.
Yeah, and you couldn't figure it out, and it's because you're used to Google Sheets. And so when I did Chastity Week, I switched to Google Sheets, and I agree. Like, all that simple stuff, they make really clear and easy to find.
Yeah, because they know that, like that one thing, every time I make a chart, I have to change the axes. And I think they know that. Google is smart enough to know what users are doing. Because most people who use a spreadsheet, the most complicated thing they do is add a chart. And then in that, the most complicated part they do is change the axes. And then that's it. Like, most people don't really get into, like, pivot tables and dynamic data pools and stuff like that.
Right.
But Excel is like, sorry, we're just going to fuck up your life while I figure it out.
I mean, I eventually figured it out. It wasn't too hard, but it was like 2 or 3 clicks away. And like,
yeah, that's stupid.
And it wasn't intuitive. Like, how it was written was just like, I had to look it up to understand the meaning.
Yeah, that sucks. Google Sheets, you just like right click or something, right? And it's like swap X and Y axis.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't made a chart on Google Sheets yet, but I do like it. And plus, you can share it easier with people because of Google Docs.
And you can embed Google Docs onto a website. I've done that before. In fact, I've used Google Sheets to record client data for a little company I own and build them dashboards by just adding like pie charts and spreadsheet rows and then embedding that in a Squarespace site on a hidden page that's password protected to basically create like a unique per client data feed dashboard without coding anything, which is very cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, that's a whole movement now. The no-code movement. Have I mentioned that to you?
No.
Yeah, I have. It's just boring, so you don't.
Yeah,
it doesn't
probably.
register. But there's a huge movement right now that's growing. It's actually estimated to be $1 billion business, I think already, of tools where you can basically build things that normally would require code but without code. So automation platforms, text parsers, spreadsheets are a big part of it. There's even apps you can use where you can build your site in a spreadsheet, just like define all the features in a spreadsheet and then like push a button and it builds a website out of it.
But there's code behind that.
Yes.
Okay.
They're coded, yeah.
Okay.
There's engineers who have to code the no-code tools.
Right.
But then once they do, it opens up the whole world to a lot of people who don't know how to code.
Yeah. I mean, there's already stuff like that, like sites like Squarespace and stuff like.
Yeah, Squarespace is a good one for like basic stuff. It's missing some things, it's missing a lot really because it's.
Well, that's the general idea. It's just like drag and drop, no-brainer stuff.
They are adding more though. I think they might actually have user accounts now, which was like the huge missing link.
User accounts?
Yeah, like you have your Squarespace account, but if you build a site on Squarespace, users, at least when I was using it, couldn't create an account on your site.
Okay.
Like they can check out, if there's a product.
Oh, I see.
But
like when you're on Etsy or something and you make an account.
Yeah.
When you're checking out.
Yeah,
okay.
because that requires like a dynamic database interaction, and that's where Squarespace just kind of dropped off. I think though, I haven't checked on them in a year, but I think they might have added that by now. I spent a long time a couple years ago trying to build that. I mean, the thing I was telling you about where I embedded spreadsheet charts on the Squarespace site and then password protected them. That was a really manual, tedious workaround because I couldn't figure out how to get user accounts for individual clients without hiring an engineer, and I wasn't going to do that. There are some tools. There's one called Bubble that I think can handle that without any code, but it's like more complicated than coding, really. Maybe not more complicated, but it's pretty much it's as hard as coding, and the documentation is worse, or at least it was again a year ago when I was trying. But anyway, there's a lot of cool tools out there that are growing. Zapier, I think, is one of my favorites.
What's that?
Yeah, Zapier. It'll like automate different things and like plug stuff together, so you can tell it to like receive an email or check your inbox, and if it finds an email matching a certain search query, then parse the email, send you a text message, open a Google Sheet, add a row, like basically do all this admin stuff. It's kind of one of those
like if this then this.
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, if this then that is one of their competitors. Although they do very different things. a lot of these tools show a lot of promise, and then they end up either not quite doing what's advertised, or I just never get around to finding it because I have ADD. I remember a few years ago I signed up for If This Then That, and I think I was just looking for like a text message alert for emails or something. And after like a few hours, all I had done was I got a notification when an astronaut goes into space. I set that up.
That's pretty adorable.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen too often.
I think it happens probably more than you might think.
Yeah? Well, I know we haven't been to the moon very often.
Yeah, but the people go to the International Space Station and
so cool.
They go into orbit. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's probably some up there now, I would think, in the ISS. But the point being, it was cool, but I also didn't need it. And what I did need, I couldn't figure out how to do with it, which is kind of, it's been an issue, but the tools are getting much better, especially now that people are recognizing how valuable they are. Because people pay a lot for that kind of shit.
Yeah. So we're getting vaccinated finally today.
Yeah, we're getting our Fauci ouchies.
Fauci ouchies.
That's what they're called now.
Yeah. Yeah, you like that, huh?
I do.
Did you see it on Twitter?
I saw it on Snapchat.
Yeah, we're getting Moderna.
Yeah.
And I am excited.
Maybe it'll make me not autistic.
It'll have like a reverse effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cancel each other out.
Interesting. I'll take 2 of those.
Yes, you will.
Super normal. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'm a little concerned, but not. I don't know. I think it's all things considered. I think the vaccine is probably safer than not vaccinating.
Yeah, not according to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he has that clip.
Yeah,
people are talking about.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's more. Like, it was one of those things. I saw like a 2-minute clip. And I wonder if there was more to it that, more context there, or if he will sort of backtrack what he meant, or I don't know, because it seemed a little ridiculous, because he was basically saying that if you're like 21 and healthy or younger, then you don't need to get vaccinated, or you shouldn't, because you're healthy, which, yeah. But I think he's missing a huge point, which is immunity. Like, yeah, we're not vaccinating young people because we're worried about them dying. We're vaccinating them because we need everyone to be vaccinated.
Right. Yeah. So the population is safer.
Right. So they're not spreading it.
Yeah. Like polio.
Yes.
And
all other
smallpox.
Pretty much all vaccinations. I mean, not like flu or stuff like that, but.
Yeah, I mean, some vaccinations are really just to kind of save your life. Like my sister was in the Peace Corps and she lived in Africa for years and she had to get vaccines. I don't know against what, but those kind are different. Like when you're going somewhere where there are common epidemics of a certain kind, then yeah, you're. It's a lot more about saving yourself.
That's true. Malaria.
But this one, it's. I mean, if you're at risk, then this is also about saving you. But if you're not at risk, then yeah, it's about getting rid of the pandemic aspect, so that everybody can try to resume a normal life.
Yeah, I was surprised he said that. I feel like he's smarter than that. I wonder. He's pretty good in my opinion about, admitting when he's wrong and whatever, just ignoring the pushback if he doesn't think he's wrong. Yeah. So I'm curious to see, because I know everyone's kind of pushing back on him right now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, he might. Yeah. I would be curious to know if he did address this part of it, or if he was more specific about why you should avoid vaccines. Because I know he's not an anti-vaxxer, like broadly. But there are issues with vaccines. Like there's reasons. Like if somebody just was like, "Hey, can I just inject you with this ostensibly safe thing that does nothing?" I would say no, you cannot, because ostensibly safe isn't the same as like, if I eat like a carrot, I know pretty much what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
But vaccines really do have a lot of weird shit in them, and sometimes they have weird interactions and.
Well, and I think you're particularly concerned because you just have a lot of weird health problems that you don't fully understand. And so you feel like you might be one of those outliers that might have a negative reaction.
Yes. I have some kind of autoimmune dysfunction. Don't know what it is. And yeah, I worry. I mean, like I have weird reactions to a lot of stuff. Like I used to get my back waxed a lot because I had a hairy back. Fortunately, after enough waxing, it just kind of like stopped being hairy. Really? Yeah. But whether I got waxed or there was an alternative thing, sugaring it was called. It was like a sugar gel mixture. Whatever I used, I would have a terrible breakout for like a week or two. My whole back would just be broken out. And no esthetician could solve it. I couldn't solve it. Like the internet couldn't solve it. There was just no explanation or solution for it. And that's the kind of thing that makes me a little concerned about stuff like vaccines, because it is some kind of, if not allergy, then it's some kind of immune response that's abnormal. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what might trigger that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I think the fillers in most vaccines are kind of common for different vaccines. And I have had other vaccines, and I get a flu shot sometimes. So like those have always been fine. So I think if I had to guess, I'll probably be fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I mean, it seems like everyone else has been fine.
Mostly.
The J&J vaccine got pulled because of 6 blood clots out of 6 million. So it's like 1 in a million chance. Yeah.
I mean, there are other complications too, though. Like people do have like full body rashes and anaphylactic episodes, you know.
What's that?
Well, anaphylactic shock is the type of allergic reaction that can kill you. I don't know.
But if that had happened from the vaccine, wouldn't we have heard about it?
I don't know. I mean, I have heard about some of this.
Through the COVID vaccines?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, like people having like full body I saw pictures of a guy. I mean, granted, I didn't individually confirm that these were real, but I saw pictures of a guy who was just like head to toe purple and red.
Yeah, you got to be careful sometimes about information like that, because there's some really legitimate looking websites that will make like what looks like legitimate studies, and they're anti-vax propaganda.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this wasn't a study. It was just like, hey, this is my uncle in the ER, and like you never know.
Yeah.
Whether that, but to be fair, I haven't looked in. What I did is when I signed up for the Fauci Ouchie appointment, I read this. Part of it said, you confirm by clicking this that you've read this document. And I was like, oh, what's that? You know, I'm one of those people who will like skim the documents that you're agreeing you read that nobody ever reads. But this one was interesting. It was a very long document. And it started by pointing out that this vaccine is technically, it hasn't gone through the normal FDA approval process. So it's technically unapproved. It's approved for this emergency use, but it doesn't count as a quote-unquote approved drug because it hasn't gone through the full trials.
Because it didn't have time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I was reading like what are the known side effects. There was a warning that said make sure you keep people who receive the vaccine, keep them on site for 20 minutes to make sure they don't die. And then it had charts of like the side effects of the vaccine compared to placebo studies, and there are a lot, this document was basically saying like a lot of people are going to have bad reactions to this vaccine, but I think the key was that like people dying from it. If that was on the list, it wasn't near the top. I just looked at the first few. It was pain, nausea, fever, fatigue, stuff like that.
And that is true. I've heard, especially the second shot, people feel like shit, especially younger people.
Yeah. But and the chart was basically saying like, yeah, this is definitely going to happen more. I really should have checked the bottom of the list to see like the least common stuff, or just sort of like Control F for sudden death. You know,
you were like very skeptical of this and unsure if you were going to get it,
yeah.
And then finally you're like, I'm just going to get it. You didn't look any further.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought about it more.
All right.
I still am skeptical and unsure, but I kind of just decided it's probably better than not doing it.
I think so. Better than getting COVID.
Probably, yeah.
There might be sudden death on the list, but I can't be bothered to read the whole sheet.
Yeah. Well, according to you, it's just some blood clots here and there.
Well, that's for the J&J. It's not working in Moderna.
Oh, and I'm sure
it's a different vaccine. The J&J one is like kind of the traditional sort of, we're putting the virus back in you, or not back in you, but a little bit of the virus in you to combat it. But the Moderna and the Pfizer are the mRNA ones.
What is that? Messenger RNA?
Yes.
So how does that
Don't
work?
ask me any further.
I didn't know it wasn't a normal vaccine.
No, it's a totally new technology. It's really interesting if you look into it.
Damn it. Now I have to look it up before I go in a few hours.
I mean, it's arguably safer.
What if it unlocks X-Men powers?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I hope it does.
Yeah, that'd be
I'm already
pretty cool.
getting some grays, so I might be like Storm, you know?
Yeah, that'd be dope.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you say it's safer than the other one?
Yeah. According to my friend who's a professor at Columbia for public health.
Yeah.
He explained it to me once, and I was like, wow, interesting. I'm going to forget everything you said in about 5 minutes.
Oh, you remembered all the propaganda points. It's better. mRNA.
Well, that was the takeaway.
Do you know what RNA stands for?
No.
Ribonucleic acid. Ribonucleic acid.
Oh, that's not too hard. Ribonucleic acid.
Yeah, do you know what DNA stands for?
Danny's nucleic acid.
Yes. Yes. No, deoxyribonucleic acid, which is
it's harder.
nucleic acid. It's ribonucleic acid with 2 oxygen molecules, I think, or 2 oxygen atoms per molecule, something like that. I don't know how any of that shit works. It's all very confusing.
Well, you just got a job writing medical stuff, so
Yeah, I'm
just
gonna have
pretend
to-
like it's your new assignment.
Yeah. I am curious. I mean, I used to know a little more, but I read a book years and years ago, many years ago, probably 15 years ago, called The Biology of Belief by a biologist named Bruce Lipton, who has since become quite popular in the New Age world, which is interesting. I certainly don't endorse everything I've seen associated with this guy, but that book was great, and it was essentially basically he was breaking down what's referred to as the central dogma of biology, namely that the brain of a cell is I think just DNA. DNA functions as the brain of a cell, kind of telling it what to do, making decisions, that kind of shit. And he was making a really good argument, I think, that is really just like a trend in science, that belief structure, and that it's a paradigm that's ready to be shifted, and it doesn't really seem to be the case anymore. That this notion of strict Darwinian evolution, and that really the membrane of a cell is much more like the brain, because the membrane is really it serves as the sensory organ interacting with the environment, letting things in and out, and then with what we know about epigenetics, basically the skin of the cell, the covering, is kind of the functional interactive unit that determines how genes will be expressed indirectly, which is it sounds like a minor point, but it's a radical idea that I don't know. I think people are going to catch on.
Yeah?
Yeah, I see a lot of evidence, a lot more evidence mounting against strict Darwinian evolution in favor of things like Lamarckian evolution.
What's that?
I think it was the evolutionary theory right before Darwin, or maybe it was a competing one at the time, and I don't really know much about it, but I do think that Darwinian evolution has seen enough quakes that it's probably going to be overturned sooner or later.
What? How?
Just a better...
Overturned?
Yeah. Just with like a better evolution theory.
But, I mean, the basic, like, we evolved from animals is the same, right?
Yeah, I think that part will probably stick.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that most of it? Like, to say you overturn it sounds like you're saying, like, oh, we didn't come from animals.
Well, not evolution, but Darwinian evolution.
Oh. But isn't that
might be
Darwinian
overturned.
evolution?
That's one aspect of it.
Isn't that, like, the aspect? Like, isn't that the main core of it?
I don't know what the main thrust is. I mean, I don't know if there were other evolutionary models that said the same thing but differed on other points. I'm not sure.
Very well.
Yeah. But, it's hard to imagine a scientific paradigm being overturned, but it's normal in the history of science. It just takes a while. And it doesn't happen often enough that people ever get used to it, But like when Einsteinian gravity replaced Newtonian gravity, that was a paradigm shift. Newton's concept of gravity was overturned by Einstein's. And what's interesting about that is that in most instances, it doesn't matter. It didn't make any real differences.
Wait, Einstein had a theory of gravity that was overturned by Newton?
Mm-hmm. Well, the theory of relativity
Isn't
includes...
Newton alive way before Einstein?
Yeah.
So how's that work?
But Newtonian gravity was the accepted model of gravity until Einstein.
Oh, sorry, I got that backwards. I thought you were saying Newton overturned Einstein.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Newton was overturned by Einstein. Because, I mean, Newton came up with really good principles of gravity, laws, so to speak, accurate calculations about things like the distance and density or mass of objects having direct correlation to the strength of gravity. And all of it was very accurate for predicting the interactions of massive bodies with mass in space. And Einstein's theory is it comes into play with, I think, just objects that are much more massive or with a much greater density. It also it comes into play with observing light across space, the curvature of light based on things like gravitational pull, black holes, that kind of thing. So a lot of it was stuff that wasn't really they weren't really concepts during the the time Newton was coming up with his shit. But I think it also took years to confirm Einstein's model. I think if I'm not mistaken, several decades before they could even devise a test. And that's what I mean when I say, like, he technically overturned Newtonian gravity, but it didn't matter. Like, still, in most cases, if you compare their two sets of theories and equations, they'll come up with the same results. It's just that one is wrong.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe the other one is too. I mean, Einsteinian gravity could be wrong too.
They came to the same conclusion, but they just had different methods of getting there.
Yeah, and Einstein's was a bit more accurate. So he came to better conclusions about certain things. And that's usually how paradigm shift goes. It's that you don't know that your paradigm is broken until decades of scientific advances that chip away at it. And where a lot of new paradigms start, or scientific theories, is they essentially re-explain the same things that are explained by the previous theory, but a little bit better or more elegantly. So like fewer steps, fewer abstractions, fewer variables. And if you can fit a new theory more simply to explain existing known phenomena, then you're kind of on your way. And then you just need experimental proofs and predictions. So that if you can predict, based on your model, the results of an experiment that hasn't been done, that's much stronger evidence for your model. So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Nice. Well, speaking of vaccines, I showed you that chart. I don't know if you were that impressed by it, but I thought it was pretty amazing. The chart of, I believe it was total COVID cases or new COVID cases. I think new COVID cases in the UK and also Israel. But the UK is like, oh my God, just visually the graph is pretty incredible. It shows like, you know, kind of this like up and down, and then all of a sudden, like around January-ish, just a massive spike. So you imagine just these new cases just going up, and then down, like just like the GME chart, just like up and then down. And it's cool because it goes down like around March when they're like rolling out these vaccines, and it's just cool to see how effective it is.
Yeah, that is cool. Do they cross-reference it with mutations and superpowers and stuff to see if maybe there's a little bonus?
Maybe we'll be at war in the UK and totally lose.
Our autism rates skyrocket
to like a fraction of the population.
Oh man, I'm scared.
Don't be scared.
I'm scared of the vaccine. What if I want the vid?
You want the vid?
Maybe I do.
Go outside and get the vid then.
Fine, maybe I will.
Well, now's a good time because Oregon is apparently at extreme risk.
Right.
Level.
Yeah. Are we in a state of emergency? Is that?
I don't know. Someone just told me this yesterday that doesn't even live here. And I was like, I haven't heard this. But I mean, he was right. This just happened yesterday. Our governor, Kate Brown, said that we're at that emergency risk level and they're closing down restaurants again, indoor dining. That sounds like it sounds like that is the only outcome as far as maybe like gyms and stuff too, which I mean, we haven't really been eating in restaurants or going to gyms anyways, so it doesn't really affect us too much. But I was just surprised to hear that because they seem to be rolling out the vaccines very quickly. And actually the articles were saying that there's more vaccines than demand. And I know that like we're kind of in the last group to get vaccinated because whatever, we're young and healthy and our jobs don't matter. And and so but
I'm a medical writer, damn it. They need me.
I got a chastity week for my computer.
That's important too. Probably. Maybe Fauci needs it to concentrate. I mean, he could be in there, you don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Sarah, help me get through this. Don't let me touch my dick. Gotta concentrate on graphs.
I got you, Fauci. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, so like our group for a while it was saying like, you know, June 1st at the latest, and then that moved up to May 1st, and then that moved up to the middle of April. And so like clearly they're rolling out these vaccines very quickly and they have plenty of them, but I guess there's a new spike. I suppose it kind of makes sense because we have had really nice weather lately. And so and I know I'm fucking antsy for this shit to be over. So it doesn't surprise me that people are maybe more out and about and there's kind of this spike going on. And also they're feeling like we're at the tail end anyways because of these vaccines.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently that's going on. I mean, I read it was only going to be a couple more weeks. So.
And then meanwhile, India is doing terribly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, India, I guess, has like all these new mutations and
yeah,
people dying and.
Yeah.
Not enough hospital space.
Yeah, I saw an Instagram post, and I have no idea how accurate any of it is, but they were saying that it's bad enough that the mass cremations are running out of wood to burn bodies, which is bad.
Yeah.
And they had a picture of 2 people on respirators sharing one little narrow hospital bed. They just had like people stacked in hospital beds.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have a lot of fucking people there.
Yeah. So that sucks.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, I'm at such a information fatigue with all this. Like at the beginning, I was so curious about like how this thing spreads and what works and what doesn't. And now it's just like so much conflicting information. You told me earlier that Texas apparently like...
Yeah, like a month ago, they lifted restrictions and the new case rate dropped.
Yeah, so I'm just like throwing up my hands. Like, I don't fucking understand any of this. I'll wear a mask. I'll get vaccinated in my time and whatever, do all these things. But I don't fucking claim to know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. The Texas one, I don't know if they have since come up with an explanation, but I just remember at the time reading that Fauci was like, I don't know. That's that's weird. And then there's also like around the same time as when I found out that New York was doctoring their numbers.
Oh yeah. Well, Cuomo got in trouble for that.
Yeah, nursing home deaths. I think they cut the number in half.
Right, and I think he did that because something with Trump, like didn't.
Yeah, because I think it was like the Justice Department or the State Department. Something. One of Trump's admins was like harassing them all the time, and they felt threatened by, which I believe. Sure. You know, so they fudged their numbers so that they didn't come under attack, which is like, I don't know if that was ultimately more effective than telling the truth, but it's concerning. Yeah. It's very concerning. And then, so like when you hear about this Texas thing, like it could be just a big conspiracy, you know, it could be somebody's just fudging numbers. Who knows, really?
No, that's true. I mean, if there's one thing I feel like I've learned through all this is like, I definitely have a lot less trust for the powers that be telling us the truth, you know. I still haven't gotten over Fauci telling us that masks don't matter.
Right. God.
I know that was like 10 years ago, guys, but I'm still thinking about it.
It's fucked up.
Yeah.
It's
or they're not effective.
Yeah.
And it's like, even with the explanation, it's like, come on. You could have, you know, if the concern was you wanted to preserve a certain amount of, you know, N90 masks for medical people, I think there's a way you could explain that to the public without lying to them.
I mean, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. But at the end of the day, I think the outcome is, you don't want the outcome of like people not trusting you.
Yes, I would agree with that part. So I think I won't blame Fauci specifically because I don't know if it was even his idea. I can easily imagine like military intelligence saying things like, hey, based on our projections, if you don't lie to the public about masks, then our medical system will collapse in a month or something.
That's fair. I don't mean to make him as a scapegoat. But
but on the other hand, maybe it was his idea. But I still think at the end of the day, unless you're really, really sure that your lie is absolutely necessary, the damage is really horrendous. It can't be overstated. Because there's already people who don't trust anything the government says.
Right.
And then when they are caught in a blatant lie like that they knew they couldn't keep, like they couldn't keep a lid on that. Obviously, people are going to know the truth.
Well, but we get enough masks, and it's like, oh, just kidding.
Right? Go buy a mask. Dude, make sure not to leave your house without a mask on for a year. Like the amount of trust they lost with stuff like that is just huge. Because it's trust, like you said, it's from like people like me and you who generally give them the benefit of the doubt, and now like. They have much less benefit of the doubt. Totally. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and especially when 20% of the population isn't going to get vaccinated, you know, because they don't trust it.
I think it's like 40% of Republicans.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely more of a right-leaning thing for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I wonder why. I mean, I guess part of it might be government mistrust. Mm-hmm. It's more common on the right since they're kind of anti-government, really. And,
you know, kind of freedom.
Yeah, that's the other thing is the left
freedom.
Is more about group rights and the right is more about individual rights. And the whole idea of vaccines, like you mentioned, aside from protecting yourself, is protecting the group. But then the counter-argument to that is that nobody should be compelled to protect their group, you know.
But it's interesting because the left is more skeptical of fluoride in the water. Wouldn't you say?
Probably, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm skeptical of fluoride in the water, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, that is a group thing as opposed to an individual thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
I mean,
I don't know.
that's kind of, I guess, anecdotal, but I remember when they were going to change the levels of fluoride here locally, and there was a huge pushback against it, and it's we're in Portland, so it's very liberal, and all my liberal friends were, not all of them, but the ones that were pushing back against it were hippy dippy liberals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not.
I know.
I'm not a hippy dippy liberal.
You're just an autistic.
Yeah, I'm like a crypto conservative liberal. Like, a lot of people just really take me for a conservative, and I'm not sure what that is exactly. What I don't know how I come across as
what a liberal is.
No, like how I seem to present as a conservative. But
it's probably like your tone of voice.
Is that it?
Yeah,
it's my tone of voice.
I don't know. You just seem very like serious and by the book, even though you're a total mess.
Yeah. God, it's ridiculous. Conservative.
What's a crypto liberal?
I mean, actually, that was a misuse of the term. I think generally when
buy Bitcoin.
No, when you apply crypto to something, it means like disguised.
Oh yeah,
I'm not a crypto. I'm not a crypto conservative because I'm not a conservative.
Right.
Let alone a disguised one. But
no, okay, I see what you mean though.
But yeah, like I mean, you hear crypto fascist is a really common term.
Right.
Applied to anybody you don't agree with.
Yeah. It's usually just fascist. Yeah. People don't usually add that flair to it, but I guess sometimes.
Yeah. It's weird. It's a troubling trend of our modern age of ascribing, through magical thinking, ascribing beliefs to people and proclaiming them to be hiding the beliefs that you made up for them.
Right. It's such a weird thing.
That's weird. Because I mean, sometimes it's true, and you can gather enough evidence. Like if you follow politicians, we all know politicians are lying at different times. And if you pay close attention to them, you can sort of figure out where their real loyalties are to an extent. You can uncover their biases, and in that way you can make an educated hypothesis about what their true beliefs are, or their interests, their biases, which is usually money. But then there's other times where it's just like a whole different, like it's just a witch hunt.
Yeah. Well, I think politicians is maybe an appropriate time to apply that, but people apply it to just like general public figures where it's just like, what are they getting out of lying?
Yeah.
Like, why would they lie about that? Like,
everybody just thinks everybody's gaslighting.
Like Joe Rogan, like he's a crypto conservative.
Right.
And it's like, why would he lie? Yeah. Like, why wouldn't he just say he's conservative if he's conservative?
Right. Yeah. Especially given that how open he is about criticizing the left and people calling him a crypto conservative. Like, he doesn't have much to lose if he is a conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when he goes down the list of philosophies and traits of liberals and conservatives and says specifically where he lies on each individual one, it's really hard to take that as a lie, Right. Like when he's very specific about his political and philosophical beliefs, that would be an insane lie.
Yeah.
To just propagate decades of this facade for apparently no reason, right? With no benefit.
And why is it, I don't know if you agree with this observation, it seems like if someone who's maybe a bit politically ambiguous or a centrist or something like that, if they have if they take one case, one issue, and they, like maybe they're pro guns or something like that, then people automatically say like, oh, you're on the right. But that never works the other way around from what I've noticed. Like if someone, is kind of on a mix of things and then they're like, oh, I believe in universal healthcare. No one's like, you're a leftist. Like, no one.
Yeah.
It's like one view can quote unquote taint you as right wing, but one view won't taint you as left wing.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that does seem true. It's another one though that's kind of anecdotal. Maybe it's not true, but yeah, that does kind of ring true to me. And if I had to guess, I would just say the left does seem, really back to group identity again. It seems the left seems much more concerned with group labels.
Yeah, that's true.
And it makes sense. I mean, and to be fair, there's a lot to be said for an interest in groups, for things like vaccination and for group rights, civil rights, labor rights. There's a reason that people organize by disadvantaged group. And it's because it's the only way they achieve power against corrupt people and at the pinnacle of power by just combining their efforts based on common interests and common pains. But also it does, I think any effective philosophical framework, specifically one overlaid on broad social life, it has a tendency to bias you in ways that you're not necessarily aware of. So a lot of people on the left maybe who are rightly concerned with group rights then maybe don't know how subconsciously preoccupied they're becoming with group identity. Mm-hmm. And then you have a lot of labels. You have 76 genders. You have like crypto conservative claims that are really just like, these people are not generally lying. I don't think. I think they just aren't necessarily aware of how their judgment may be influenced by the whole concept of groups.
Wasn't it interesting though? Like, don't you remember like in the 90s, like people were all about like labels don't matter, man. Like the same type of people who are now like they will talk to the end of time about the difference between being pansexual and being bisexual.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder.
Now it's like, it's hyper focus on labels.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's because there's less overt trouble, because the 90s, you had a lot of homophobia and you had AIDS in the early 90s. There was a lot of tension. Yeah. And the reaction of openness and dismissal of labels was very much a reaction to that tension and risk and danger. And now that that's less of a concern, certainly it's still a concern in some places especially, but now that it's less of a concern, it could be that the same people are still as interested in liberation of an oppressed or disadvantaged group, even if only historically, and then they turn to languand as a way of
I think
expressing.
That's true. There's something very like sexy about fighting for your rights, and being a part of history in that way.
Ted Kaczynski in his manifesto, the Unabomber Manifesto, which is actually pretty good. I recommend it.
Yeah, it's oddly good.
Yeah. He talked about, I think he called them power proxies.
Oh, yeah. Explain power proxies.
Well, it was essentially this idea that humans are animals, and when we lived in a state of nature, their power was expressed or achieved, interacted with through things like battle and hunting and, real violence, basically. And not just that,
survival.
But also, survival, building things physically. There was a direct interaction of power with the human being. And now that we're in a more technological age, industrialization has really taken away individual power over most things, really. And also kind of neutered people in the sense that there's not really as much of a need to be powerful in various different contexts.
We're all soft.
But people still have the drive. So instead they found an outlet for it that becomes the power proxy. And for a lot of people, it's their career. They'll just get obsessed with their career as like a way to find meaning and feel powerful, feel meaningful, really, interacting with the world. But also it can lead to sort of tainted ideologies and power conflicts that really only exist in your mind. A lot of people's hyper focus on language. I mean, language is really endlessly fascinating. One of the things that stood out that he talked about, which is something I've noticed, is that the left in particular likes to ban words. And to be fair, most of these are not something that I would complain about. Things like racial slurs. There's a reason there should be social pressure against using those. I agree with that. But on the other hand, it gets silly at times. And it's hard to know when it's getting silly. It's even harder to say when it's getting silly. But one that stood out to me was that in contemporary language, the appropriate phrase to replace quote-unquote colored people is people of color.
Right.
Colored people is now an offensive phrase. People of color that shows that you're woke, right? That's the right way to say it. And what exactly is the difference there? Literally nothing.
Yeah.
It's just the words are just shuffled around a little bit. You add a word in the middle. It means the same thing, though. So what is offensive about the old phrasing? And I think it's just that it comes from a time when people were more racist. Mm-hmm. And what was offensive about the phrase was the connotation, was the implication of grouping a group of people together dismissively, rather than exalting them with a slightly different phrasing of the same words. And so I agree with the urge to get away from oppressive, violent language. Well, not violent language, but harmful language. But I also think it leads us into stupid traps where people become hyper-focused on language and labels and phrasing, when really it alienates a lot of people. It creates divisions.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's so many cases of people like, they're just not cut up. They didn't get the memo, what's not okay to say and what's not. And they don't, mean to hurt anyone. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They just haven't learned the new rules, and people are a little bit too quick to ostracize those people and not give them a chance.
And that leads to greater gaps between political, philosophical ideologies.
Yeah.
And then you have more divisive polarization, and really a lot of it is just based on a hypersensitivity to language. That's, I'm not going to say it's irrational, but it should be checked. People should try to be self-aware about these things.
Yeah, I don't like this new norm I see, like, in the Twitter discourse, whenever like someone says something that might be a little ignorant or naive, and they're trying to understand, like they're asking questions, and they get dismissed of like, it's not my job to educate you.
Right.
And the type of people who say it's not my job to educate you consider themselves activists.
Right. Yeah.
If you're a fucking activist, the best thing you could possibly do is engage in conversation with someone who's asking questions and trying to understand.
Yeah.
That's probably I think that's better than just going out and marching, in my opinion. Like, if you can like actually engage with someone and change their mind, that's like the best form of activism you can do.
Totally. And because it does two things. One, if you're right about your cause and you can cogently represent it, then you can convert people. Two, it makes you look good, and it makes your people look good, because you're the kind of people who engage with those who don't understand where you're coming from. That's the most powerful thing you can do socially. And then the other angle of that is that I do understand if somebody like literally doesn't have the time or emotional energy to engage with someone, but then it's not right to phrase that like it's their fault,
right,
for not already knowing something.
Yeah.
You can send them a link, or you can just not answer, which is what most people do when they're too busy. They don't make a big show of it. They don't virtue signal how busy they are. Like,
right.
That's a shitty way to behave.
Yeah.
And you're not convincing anybody. All you're doing is gathering other people who like to bullshit.
Yeah, and you just look like an asshole, and the person comes away thinking like, wow, those people are assholes. I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah,
like, is that your goal?
I was having a debate with somebody on Twitter when I first got on Twitter like 2 or 3 years ago, and it didn't go very far before she said that she demands payment for these kinds
the emotional
of
labor, of course.
Right? Yeah. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, can we not just be adults here? Like, right. Can we just have a conversation? Because I wasn't being rude. She was being a little rude, but not too rude. But I was really just trying to figure out where she was coming from, and she demanded payment for her opinion. So I was like, God, like we will probably never have a civil conversation.
Yeah.
If that's your disposition.
I've been accused of JAQing off, JAQ, just asking questions.
Oh, right.
Before. It's like, what? No, this is a good thing.
Right.
We should
just
be
asking
just
questions is good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that perhaps some people are insincere and they are asking questions to get a reaction, or their question is like the subtext is they're trying to make their own point. Mm-hmm. But even then, if you are right and you have the right arguments,
then answer the question.
Still answer it.
Right.
Yeah. Or, whatever. Yes, it's technically true that, it's not your job to educate them. Like, that's fine. You're right. You're not
so go away.
Yeah. So then just don't bother. But, like, to say that, to just dismiss people or to just tell them they're just jacking off, like, you're not helping anything. And in fact, you're probably making things worse.
Yeah. And you're making yourself look like you can't answer a basic question.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is insecurity. Because, I mean, like, I used to get in debates with my friends as a teenager, and, like, my debates with my friends always ended the quickest because I feel like I was the most rational, and they couldn't fucking tolerate that, because I would essentially use the Socratic method, which is great because by asking questions and setting up precedents, like hypotheticals, like hypothetically this, hypothetically that, people fucking hate answering hypotheticals. Oh, yeah. And I think it's because they don't know where you're going.
Right.
But for me, it was always a genuine effort to establish principles. Mm-hmm. So I would use extreme hypotheticals to confirm common ground. Like, do you believe at least in this scenario, then this? Okay, if so, you're right that I'm going to use that against you if I can, but not in a disingenuous way, not in a bullshit way, not in a rhetorical way, in a way of illustrating where your potential fallacies might lie, right?
Yeah.
But again, people don't like that. But I liked it because, first of all, it is a powerful position to argue from. But also, if I'm wrong, it's how I'll learn I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing it in a way by asking questions that already diffuses a lot of the conflict. So I won't feel pressured to maintain my side if I am wrong. Because sometimes I'm wrong. Yeah. And I'll just admit that. If I lose a debate, I lose a debate.
Well, that's more of a, what they call it, dialectic.
Yeah.
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 Versus a debate. Like a debate is you're just kind of attacking each other with points. And but you, at the end of the day, you're probably, each side is more entrenched in their side than they were at the beginning. But if you're engaging in a dialectic like you're describing, it's this idea of like conversation with questions to hopefully reach a truth together.
Yeah, I guess I wanted a dialectic, but
That's really hard to find.
Especially when something starts as a debate, it's hard to convert it.
Yeah, and I think people don't most people don't really understand how that works, and especially if you have beliefs that you feel strongly about, and you start out defensively, and you're doing it on Twitter,
right?
It really turns out well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say when my debates ended so early as a kid, I wasn't winning them, you know?
Yeah.
It was, people were just stopping. They just wouldn't proceed.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I was so confused by it at the time. My social and emotional intelligence was like severely inhibited, and it took a long time before I could comprehend why people were so threatened by hypothetical questions. But it finally made sense.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that someone assumes a question is just a question. And it's probably rare that someone is actually just asking a question as opposed to like having some other point that they're going to like reveal in a gotcha if you engage in the question.
Yeah. And you know, in my case, again, to be fair, it was totally my intent to win the argument, you know? So yeah, anything I ask, probably their answer, I think, is going to end up helping me some way, but it was never a plan. I didn't have like a set series of steps. It was just like, let's completely deconstruct every component of the conversation. Usually if you actually go through with that, what you'll find very quickly is that you actually agree on the fundamental points, but you define words differently.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
You use a certain word and you don't know the other person uses it a slightly different way or a totally different way or assuming a different context or background. Basically, a lot of baggage gets snuck in to these debates. But if you have the patience to sit there and go through all the details, then you really have just no argument by the end of it. Because you found out exactly where you fall on individual issues. And
I think we've had that experience more than once where we like thought we disagreed, but when we really started understanding like what we meant by certain words or certain things, like we eventually found out we agreed far more than we disagreed.
Yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine is a Christian apologist. Mm-hmm. I think he has like a degree in apologetics. And I don't know exactly what apology.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry, buddy. I know.
Stupid.
Christians are dicks. But no, I think apologetics is essentially it's like argumentation.
It.
Yeah. So he was essentially like deeply skilled in debate, specifically around Christianity, and really the overlap with philosophy is like huge. It's just a lot of the same. It's like lawyers are basically experts in apologetics. Indirectly. But anyway, he's written a couple books and they're interesting. And but he made the point that so many of his philosophical debates he gets in are totally meaningless. And if everybody would just start by defining terms, you wouldn't even have to have the debate. Like, and he was saying that when you write a book or an essay arguing a point, if you don't start by defining your terms, you're going to lose a lot of the audience, no matter how good your argument is. Yeah. And that was a really good point. I think he's right. It's just also very hard when people are emotional or engaged or committed for some reason to an ideology or whatever. Yeah. It's very hard to get them to slow down and go backwards to make sure you're starting in the same place. Yeah. Especially because of people's reliance on this Frankfurt bullshit thing, but rely on rhetorical power. Because then if you try to back away from that, if you try to get them to drop that and start somewhere else, they're insecure. Yeah. And they may not know why they're insecure because they don't know that they're full of shit. But it's because of their hyper focus on rhetoric, really.
Explain the Frankfurt bullshit.
Yeah, so Harry Frankfurt was a philosopher who wrote a book. I think it was his thesis or something, but it was called On Bullshit. And it was a neat little short book explaining what bullshit seems to be. So his effort was, his goal was to try to figure out what people mean when they call something bullshit. And what he came up with, which I think is pretty accurate, is the idea that bullshit doesn't have to be false. That's kind of a fallacy that you take for granted. What matters with bullshit is that the person uttering the bullshit isn't concerned with whether it's false. That makes it bullshit. And in those cases, it's usually because that person is more concerned with a broader point. Right. So they bullshit on little points that then end up becoming the main conflict. So essentially, like in political debates, a lot of times, you can end up with people really spending most of their time debating things that neither of them are that committed to in reality, but they see it as a proxy for their movement. And they are committed to the broader movement, so they don't give ground on little things, which makes them full of shit.
Yeah, I think a good example of that is, it's kind of a heavy topic, but like the Breonna Taylor case. For a long time, the story was that she was shot asleep in bed. And later it came out that she wasn't asleep. Like, she was actually like within the line of fire. And, you know, it doesn't make it any less of a tragedy. Like, I think there's, you know, the broader point of like, I don't know whether we should have no-knock warrants or police violence or blah, blah, blah. I think all those things still apply. But like, I would still hear people make the point that police just shoot people when they're sleeping in bed.
Right.
And then if you were to push back on that detail,
you're a fascist.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, or
and it's
racist.
like, well, it doesn't mean we disagree on, you know, the broader point, but like, why bullshit? Like, let's look at reality for what it is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think good people get drawn into that tendency, and I'm guilty too. I still get drawn into bullshit. I catch myself sometimes. I'm sure I don't always catch myself, but it happens, I think, for it's, I'm compassionate with people, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think if somebody bullshits on something, they're just a bullshitter.
Right.
I don't think that at all. I used to be a much bigger bullshitter than I am. It's because of self-awareness and self-compassion, really. And I think it's born of this urgency that a lot of politics has these days, frankly, because of presidents like Donald Trump. The volume and the heat are really turned up. And it feels threatening. And a lot of times it is threatening. Like, people are in danger because of actual fascist movements. So when you get in a debate that's even close to that territory, you feel an obligation to stand your ground and don't give over, whether it's to fascists or anybody else, don't give them an inch, you know?
Yeah.
And I understand that and I respect it. But on the other hand, if you want to play the long game and actually change the world, then you have to have a little more faith in yourself and your values and less faith in an ideology, right?
Yeah.
And if you actually engage people, some of the time you're going to come across trolls and nothing you say will change it, or maybe they're just pure psychopaths and you might waste your time. They might manipulate you in the conversation. You might even lose a debate that you shouldn't have lost. But I feel like that's a lot better than blinding yourself to your own bullshit.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think you gather a lot more support that way too. In the long run.
I think that's a good place to stop.
Cool.
Good rant.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We're going to go get our Fauci Ouchies later, so if we don't come back, it's the vaccine's fault.
Yeah. All right. Bye, guys.
Peace.